Well, hello everybody. Today I'm here with Paul McEntee. Hi, Paul.
Jim, how are you?
Great. Paul is an outsourced CFO. His company is B2B CFOs. And if you've not heard of what an outsourced CFO is, I'm going to ask Paul to explain that. What is an outsourced CFO?
Sure. Let's start first with what is a CFO. A CFO is somebody who's really responsible for the finances within the organization. However, the role of a CFO has really evolved in the last few years, and it's gone much more beyond that. When I was a CFO, for clients, I used to spend, maybe 10 or 20% of my time on the actual books and records.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all you
Right.
should spend,
Right.
because your processes and your procedures should be in place to really produce that financial information for you accurately.
Yes. Yes.
Very important that it's accurate, because you're going to be making decisions on it.
Right.
But I think the more modern CFO is somebody who is very forward thinking. We all know accountants like to be very historical. They like everything to tick and tie, and they're very, very good at that. But in today's world, with the pace of business and the pace of change,
Right.
you have to be really forward thinking. You have to be strategic. You have to be focused on your planning. You have to be able to, assess your risks and, identify your opportunities so the business can prosper and grow.
Right. It's interesting. Years ago, believe it or not, I was actually a CFO. I have an accounting background.
And a CPA.
Yeah, and a CPA, which a lot of people find hard to believe. But my old boss used to say I was the financial conscience of the company.
Yeah. It's almost as if we should retitle it Chief Reality Officer.
That's
because
not bad, yeah.
you have to give the results as they are, whether they're not so good or whether they're great. In either case, you have to temper it and really provide insight as to what is going on that's producing these results.
Right.
Even if they're good,
Right.
you got to understand, hey, what are we doing that is making us very successful? Because if you're doing something right, don't you want to replicate it and make sure that you have the plans to capitalize on that in place? Because that opportunity could be gone in a minute. Or, what really happens sometimes with companies that are growing fast is that they burn through all their cash.
Yeah. Right.
And then they wake up one day and they're trying to figure out how to make payroll on Thursday night before they pay it. And it's, they failed to really adequately plan for that instance, even though they might be very profitable.
So it sounds like a very interesting and a very necessary role. How did you get to be this sort of independent part-time CFO? What's a little bit of your background?
So I did my 20-some years in public accounting, and I was exposed to all sorts of companies, whether they were service companies, whether they were distributors, manufacturers, technology companies. Never did too much in the nonprofit world. Just never had the opportunity to do that. And then I went. I had a client who said, "Come work for me one day."
Right.
And this is a long-term client, 15 years. Kind of hard to say no.
Yeah.
And so I worked with them through the downturn, which was incredibly challenging. As most people can attest to out there, it was a very severe downturn. And we eventually sold that business.
Okay.
And of course, the first guy to go in a business sale is probably the CFO, because they've already got their people in place.
Yeah.
And so I went to work for one of our customers, and I was there for 4 or 5 years, and there were some some changes in leadership, and perhaps I didn't see eye to eye, and I went back, and as I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, I said, one of the things that I loved about public accounting is that I was really able to help, small to medium-sized business owners with the complexity of their finances. And I was just like, wow, how do I get back into this without having to, sign on the dotted line and be locked up to one place and have my entire career tied to the success of that place. So I found, or they found me, I'm not sure which, but it, has really given me the opportunity to go back and do what I enjoy, which is helping people understand their finances. And
well, let me ask you this question. So let's say I have a business. Maybe it's got a little bit of complexity to like manufacturing or something like that. I'm doing $5 million a year in sales. Why can't I just get by with a bookkeeper or a controller or something like that? What do I need with a CFO?
Well, I think every business needs some sort of financial leadership. You can call it chief financial officer, but if you really want to grow and get better at what you do, you really need somebody who's going to sit there and give you reality checks and establish accountability within an organization. I don't know too many bookkeepers or controllers who are really good at establishing accountability, and their training isn't to look forward. Their training is to record things. They're not going to be able to say, how do I evaluate this opportunity? They're tied up in the day-to-day day-to-day things.
Well, that actually reminds me, you mentioned a couple things. One, in my CFO days, I remember I'd sometimes get frustrated with the owner when he wasn't doing things that would sort of maximize our profitability. So I used to tell him we should just file for non-profits because he didn't seem that interested in profit.
Well, even back when you were a CPA, you see companies that do 15 million and they get their net of 3 or 4% on their sales, and they go on year after year after year. And they never capitalize on any of the opportunities they have. Which, you really want to ask them the question of, well, why are you in business to be mediocre? You could sell all your assets and, maybe accomplish the same thing by living off the interest or dividends on the investments.
Well, and, if you think about it this way, depending on what kind of business and what kind of margins they have, you have to make. If you wanted to net $100,000, let's say, and you've got a 20% margin, you got to do $500,000 worth of sales.
Yes.
But a good CFO could maybe find $100,000 of expense that could be eliminated or managed better and accomplish sort of the same thing.
It's all in how you evaluate it. You have to look at it both ways. You can spend $2 million to net $100,000, or you can figure out, well, let's increase our margin and work half as hard, or maybe twice as hard and quadruple the profit.
Right, exactly.
Or
focus on the more interesting things like growing the business rather than.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because. Sometimes business owners get so beholden to the customer that they really don't understand the cost of that particular customer. I mean, it may be a loss leader. Does that really make sense? They're causing all these headaches and stress at night and unrealistic deadlines, and that's okay if you're getting paid for it.
Right.
But if you're not getting paid for it, why would you want to continue your relationship and drain your resources away from the clients who are profitable?
Well, and the other thing I was going to mention was I had a lady working for me who was essentially a controller, but kind of between a controller and a bookkeeper. She was very sharp. I mean, she could find a lot of things, but she would never have the courage to confront, another senior manager or the owner and say, hey, why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. In that can be a challenge with a controller or an accountant or just a general level accountant, is that they do not have the skill set to, I wouldn't say confront people, but I would say, sometimes you have to be very collaborative in how you approach
well, of
people,
course, right,
and
right.
kind of understand their personalities, because the last thing you want to do as a chief financial officer is burn bridges instead of build bridges within the company. Your job is to try and bring everybody together to collectively solve problems, not necessarily
That's a good point.
Point fingers and say, hey, your department is costing X and it's not producing the right level of return.
Right.
You have to be figure out what the best solution is.
Yes, of course.
And I think oftentimes what I've found is that the best ideas are already within the organization. They just have not set up their team to be able to bring
often a problem.
to bring out the best results.
So, can you share with us a success story where you came in as a CFO and what you saw as an issue and how you resolved it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of accounting software out there today, and it will produce you financial statements. And I had a client where they had timely financial information. That's great. Well, unfortunately, nobody really understood how to classify anything or how it related to their cost structure. Was it, they didn't even have a budget. Which begs the question of, well, how do you know how to price your project or your product if you don't understand what your costs are?
Right.
And I think what I was able to do in that instance is establish some metrics. Obviously help them clean up and produce a meaningful and insightful financial reporting package that went much more beyond your standard P&L, and if the system is even producing a cash flow statement, I would be surprised in that instance. But more importantly, understand how to relate the cost structure back to the financial statements, and really begin to teach them to look at customer profitability. So that the key today is, one, understand your margins so that you can control your SG&A and really get the profitability that you deserve.
So your story reminds me of a client company I worked with for a while that manufactured large industrial cabinets. So sheet metal, they'd been sheet metal, welded, painted, that sort of thing, and not a real well-organized company. And I couldn't get them to a point to do the analysis, but I'm absolutely positive they had some jobs they were just making an absolute killing, and others they were giving away.
Yeah, and the key there was, well, what would it have been to the owner's individual wealth if he had been able to eliminate all that unprofitable work? In that industry, one bad job can mean your return on sales is 3%.
Right.
And you get rid of that job, maybe it's 25 then.
Yeah. So in my experience of, especially in entrepreneurial or mid-sized businesses, usually the CEO, president / owner has come from either a sales background or an engineering background.
Yeah.
and they just had never had the opportunity to really understand the finances. So those are probably the kind of people you can.
Yeah, and I think those are people that I can definitely help because they understand their product, they understand their position in the marketplace. However, for whatever reasons, they've never had the opportunity to have a financial person in-house, or, they just get their financial statements and, great, I got financial statements, I'm making money, But, the question I always ask, you may be making money, but how much are you leaving on the table?
Right, exactly.
You could be netting 10 and making, yourself good living, but what good is that if you're leaving, another 10, 12% on the table?
Sure.
Well, and what would that difference, what would that do to your cash flows?
Right.
And, what would that do for your overall financial picture?
So, in a way, what you provide, like when I was CFO, even though I was there all the time, they really weren't paying me for my time. They were paying me for a few insights that I might make throughout the year. So, to a mid-sized or entrepreneurial company, they in effect get the benefit. I don't know what CFOs make, $200,000 or something like that for a fraction of the cost.
And I think that's part of what my goal is that, again, I believe everybody needs financial leadership within a company. The question is, if you don't have that $250,000 in your back pocket, my goal is how do we structure that so that you get the information or the advice that you need and really provide it to you on a structure it so that it's cost affordable and it's what you need.
So are there 3 or 4 particular situations where someone could really use your kind of expertise?
Yeah, I would think in any company that is growing rapidly, they certainly can benefit from the financial guidance because, even though you're making money, you may wake up one morning and find out that everything's tied up in cash or in inventory and receivables. I think anytime a business owner doesn't really understand the ins and outs of his financial statements, and I think with small business, it's more about cash flow.
Often the case, yes.
Really understanding your profitability. I think those are good clients. Anybody who doesn't understand how to talk to their banker, the worst sin you can commit is be in trouble at the company and wait 6 to 9 months to let the bank know, hey, we're having problems. They're friendly with you, but the minute you get a hiccup, that they bring in their friend from the special credit department. And
so I imagine if somebody is anticipating the need for some financing, loans, or a line of credit, they probably should talk to you first and make sure they get the best deal and are the most creditworthy on paper.
Yeah, because one thing that lenders don't like is they don't like stories without facts and information to back them up. And they are pretty adept at identifying those people who really don't have a good set of books right away.
Right.
They're experienced. They've this isn't their first rodeo.
Right.
And that's why you really need, before you go talk to a lender, is to really make sure that your records are in order, because the first thing that happens is they up the risk factor.
Right.
And that's something that you do not want.
And if for people who have not gone to a bank before, one thing they seem funny about is they want to know how they're going to get paid back. So you want to do some kind of projection in the future, not just the past. It's
banks are funny that way. they want to make sure that you can get paid back.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's marketplace, it may be more of a non-traditional lender that may be able to help you out, because it seems in this environment, banks, your traditional banks, are really looking for the B plus and A clients to work with, because since the financial downturn, they've been very risk adverse.
So, Paul, if somebody in our audience has a financial question they'd like to run by you, or maybe want to explore this concept, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I think the best way is go to b2bcfo.com, and I have 200 and some partners,
okay,
spread out across the country. I'm on the website,
okay,
or you can simply email me at paulmcentee at b2bcfo.com.
Okay. Is there a cell phone?
Or you can call me, 312-933-8095.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Jim. This was fun. It's always good to see you.
Absolutely. If you have any financial questions, I do encourage you to call Paul. I've known him for a number of years. He's a guy high integrity, and I'd be very comfortable recommending him for any of your financial issues. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching, and thanks for your time.
Okay, great.